A sudden surge of energy illuminates ancient ruins on a forgotten planet. The ground trembles as centuries-old warnings come to life. "We shouldn't have opened it," whispers a terrified voice. Strange symbols glow brighter with each passing second. Something ancient stirs beyond reality. Can three scientists prevent the awakening of a cosmic nightmare? Their discovery could save the galaxy, or doom it forever. Subscribe now to witness their desperate race against time. The research vessel Aurora descended through Xantona's atmosphere, its hull shimmering against the planet's perpetual twilight. Professor Emil Graves stood at the main viewport, his sharp eyes scanning the desolate landscape below. For decades, he had dedicated his life to studying the remnants of ancient civilizations across the galaxy, but this particular mission promised something extraordinary. The preliminary scans had detected massive structures buried beneath layers of dust and time, structures that didn't match any known architectural patterns. By his side, Sarah Norris meticulously organized her translation equipment. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, arranging linguistic databases and decryption algorithms. She had spent years deciphering dead languages, from the pictographic scripts of Proxima Centauri 4 to the complex tonal systems of the Andromeda civilizations. Yet something about these new readings made her stomach churn with both excitement and apprehension. The energy signatures emanating from the site suggested technology far beyond anything they had encountered before. In the engineering bay, Jake O'Rourke ran final diagnostics on their excavation equipment. His calloused hands moved with practiced ease over the maintenance consoles. As the team's mechanical specialist, he had seen his share of ancient machinery, some of it still operational despite centuries of neglect. But nothing had prepared him for what their sensors were picking up from Xantona's surface. The harmonic resonance patterns hinted at mechanisms operating on principles that defied conventional physics. Their landing party consisted of just these three specialists, a deliberate choice by the Intergalactic Archaeological Council. Too large a team might damage whatever treasures lay hidden beneath the planet's surface. As they disembarked onto the rust-colored plains, a cold wind carrying traces of unknown minerals whipped around them. The air composition was breathable, though thin, and the gravity slightly lower than Earth standard. Through their protective visors, they could see the first hints of artificial structures emerging from the dust like sleeping giants. The excavation began methodically, with each team member playing their crucial role. Professor Graves directed the initial dig, his voice calm but authoritative through their communication channels. "We're looking at what appears to be the remains of a ceremonial complex," he observed, pointing out the precise geometric patterns in the exposed stone. "These angles, they're reminiscent of the Zeta Reticuli artifacts, but more refined." His gloved hand traced the edge of a partially uncovered monolith, feeling the subtle vibrations that seemed to pulse through the material. Sarah knelt beside a series of carvings that had been revealed by the morning's work. Her specialized scanner hummed softly as it captured detailed images of the glyphs. "These aren't just decorative," she murmured, already mentally categorizing the symbols. "There's a definite linguistic structure here. See how these patterns repeat in threes." She pointed out a particular sequence that appeared at regular intervals along the base of the structure. "It reminds me of the triadic syntax we found on Arcturus 3, but the variations are more complex." Jake worked nearby, carefully clearing debris from what appeared to be some kind of access panel. His tools sparked occasionally as they encountered unknown alloys. "This metalwork is incredible," he commented, running a diagnostic probe along the edges. "The molecular bonding suggests self-repairing properties. Whatever built this new things we've only theorized about." He paused, noting something peculiar about the panel's orientation. "Professor, you might want to see this. The angle of these markings matches your earlier observations about the geometry." As the day progressed, their discoveries accumulated rapidly. Beneath the outer layer of decay, they found evidence of advanced technology integrated seamlessly with the architecture. Power conduits pulsed faintly with residual energy, and crystalline structures embedded in the walls responded to their presence with subtle shifts in color. Each revelation brought new questions while answering none. The scale of the construction suggested resources and labor far beyond what small colonies typically invested in religious sites. It was late into their third day of exploration when they uncovered the portal chamber. The entrance had been cleverly concealed behind layers of false walls and protective barriers, requiring both Sarah's linguistic insights and Jake's mechanical expertise to navigate. When they finally stepped inside, the sheer scale of the structure took their breath away. The circular chamber stretched hundreds of meters in diameter, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal under their helmet lights. At the center of the room stood the portal itself, a massive ring-like structure suspended above a dais of black obsidian. Complex machinery surrounded it, much of it still intact despite the passage of millennia. Energy crackled faintly across its surface, creating patterns that resembled constellations moving against a starry sky. "This isn't just a doorway," Professor Graves whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "It's an interface between dimensions. Look at the way space-time distorts around it." Sarah approached cautiously, her translation device working overtime to capture the inscriptions covering every available surface. "These aren't just warnings," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're instructions, safety protocols. The language is incredibly sophisticated, using mathematical concepts to express temporal relationships." She pointed to a particularly dense cluster of symbols. "This section describes maintaining containment fields. It's talking about something trapped beyond the portal." Jake circled the base of the structure, his engineering scanner buzzing with increasing intensity. "Whatever this thing is, it's still active," he reported. "I'm reading fluctuating quantum states that shouldn't be possible without constant energy input. And look at these support structures. They're designed to contain forces that could tear apart normal matter." He tapped a control panel, causing the entire structure to emit a low harmonic vibration. "Not good," he muttered, quickly stepping back. The translations began to paint a terrifying picture. Sarah worked tirelessly, cross-referencing each symbol with known linguistic databases while simultaneously documenting new patterns. "The civilization that built this called themselves the Kael'Voran," she explained, her voice strained from hours of concentration. "They were masters of dimensional manipulation, able to traverse realities with their technology. But something went wrong during one of their expeditions." She highlighted a sequence of glyphs depicting what appeared to be a swirling vortex consuming stars. Professor Graves examined the historical context encoded in the carvings. "According to these records, they encountered an entity they named the Devourer," he said, tracing the lines of a particularly ominous illustration. "It wasn't a physical being in the traditional sense, more like a force of nature given consciousness. They describe it as hunger incarnate, existing outside normal space-time parameters." He paused, considering the implications. The portal wasn't originally a prison. It was their means of travel. They had to repurpose it after it followed them home. Jake finished grimly, having completed his own analysis of the structural modifications. "Look at these reinforcement patterns. They added layer upon layer of containment systems, each one more desperate than the last." He pointed out stress fractures in the material that told a story of barely contained power. "The whole structure is like a bandage over a wound that never healed. Every few centuries, they had to reinforce it again." Sarah found confirmation in the texts. "The Kael'Voran couldn't destroy it completely," she translated haltingly. "Its existence is tied to fundamental aspects of reality itself. Instead, they created this quarantine. But even then, they knew it was only a temporary solution." Her fingers hovered over a particularly disturbing passage. "They talk about cycles, periods when the entity's influence grows stronger. We need to check our timeline calculations." The realization struck them almost simultaneously. Professor Graves consulted his chronometer with growing alarm. "The last recorded reinforcement cycle was approximately 500 years ago," he announced. "Based on the degradation patterns in the materials." His voice trailed off as the implications sank in. Sarah quickly cross-referenced the timing with the warning inscriptions. "That's consistent with their predictions," she confirmed. "They mentioned the waning phase, a period when the containment field naturally weakens." We've arrived during one of those cycles. Jake's engineering scanner began emitting warning tones. I'm detecting increased quantum fluctuations in the portal's matrix, he reported, adjusting his instruments. The containment fields are destabilizing faster than expected. If we don't do something. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The data spoke for itself. The entity's influence was already beginning to seep through the dimensional barrier. We need to understand their protocols, Professor Graves insisted, moving to examine a series of control panels. The Kelvoran must have left instructions for maintaining the seal. Their civilization may be gone, but their knowledge could still save us. Sarah nodded, already cataloging sections of text that referenced emergency procedures. There's a sequence here about recalibrating the harmonic dampeners, she said, pointing to a complex diagram. But it requires precise synchronization with the planet's natural energy fields. Jake studied the power conduits running through the chamber. The system's drawing more energy from somewhere, he observed. If we can trace the source, maybe we can boost the containment fields manually. But we'll need to work fast. These readings show exponential growth and instability. The three researchers exchanged determined glances. Time was running out, and their survival depended on deciphering ancient technology while fighting against forces they barely understood. The chamber's mechanisms proved both fascinating and terrifying in their complexity. Jake traced the power conduits to a subterranean network of crystalline structures that pulsed with stored energy. These crystals are amazing, he marveled, careful not to touch the delicate formations. They're like batteries, but they store information as well as power. Each one contains centuries of operational data. He connected his portable analyzer, watching as streams of data flowed across his display. Looks like the system automatically adjusts based on environmental factors. Smart design, but it's reaching its limits. Sarah worked nearby, translating maintenance logs etched into the walls. The Kelvoran had teams that would come every century to perform adjustments, she explained. They called themselves the Keepers. These writings detail their procedures, daily checks, monthly calibrations, annual reinforcements. She paused, her expression darkening. But the last entries become increasingly desperate. Resources were running out. People were disappearing. The entity was affecting them somehow, driving them mad or worse. Professor Graves focused on the central control console, where complex patterns of light danced across transparent surfaces. This is where they monitored the containment, he observed, attempting to interpret the readouts. See these waveforms? They represent the barrier's integrity, when they peak too high or drop too low. He demonstrated by touching a control, causing the patterns to shift dramatically. A low rumble echoed through the chamber as the portal's surface rippled dangerously. We need to stabilize these frequencies, he concluded. Too much variance could cause catastrophic failure. The trio worked in tense silence, each discovery bringing new challenges. The system's sophistication suggested multiple redundancies and failsafes, but many components showed signs of age and wear. Ancient lubricants had dried out, leaving mechanisms stiff and unresponsive. Power flows fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes surging dangerously before stabilizing again. Every action they took required careful consideration of potential consequences across the entire network of controls. As they delved deeper into the control systems, the true nature of their predicament became horrifyingly clear. Jake's engineering scanner picked up strange anomalies in the portal's quantum signature. Something's pushing back, he warned, his voice tight with tension. The entity isn't just passively contained, it's actively trying to break through. Look at these interference patterns. The display showed chaotic waves disrupting the containment fields, growing stronger with each passing minute. Sarah's translation of the warning inscriptions revealed chilling details. The Kelvoran described it as a cancer of reality, she whispered, her hands trembling slightly as she worked. It doesn't just consume matter or energy, it devours coherence itself. Space, time, causality, all become meaningless in its presence. She pointed to a series of increasingly frantic messages left by the last keepers. They talk about the unraveling, areas where physical laws simply stopped working. Gravity reversed. Objects existed in multiple places at once. Professor Graves examined the environmental readings from their initial scans. "Remember those inexplicable geological formations we found near the site?" he asked. "Now I understand. Those weren't natural formations at all." He pulled up comparative analysis charts. Whole sections of the planet's crust have been fundamentally altered at the molecular level. The entity's influence has been leaking for centuries, slowly corrupting everything around it. His face grew pale as he processed the implications. If we don't contain it properly, this entire region of space could become uninhabitable. The situation worsened as they watched. The portal's surface began displaying disturbing images, fragments of possible futures where stars winked out of existence, planets dissolved into chaos, and entire civilizations disappeared without trace. The entity wasn't just dangerous, it represented a fundamental threat to the ordered universe itself. Every moment they delayed increased the risk of complete containment failure. The decision to attempt reactivation of the ancient systems came after hours of intense debate. "We can't just walk away," Professor Graves argued, his normally calm demeanor replaced by urgent determination. "If we leave now, the entity will break free within days, maybe hours. We have to try." Sarah nodded reluctantly, having translated sections describing emergency protocols. "The Kael'Voran left instructions for extreme situations," she confirmed. "They called it the Final Protocol, a last-ditch effort to reinforce the containment using external power sources." Jake examined the power distribution networks. "We can use the ship's fusion reactor," he suggested. "With some modifications, we should be able to create a temporary boost to the containment fields." He quickly sketched out a plan, highlighting critical junction points. "But we'll need to run cables down from the surface. That means someone has to stay here to monitor the portal while the others set up the connection." The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Each option carried significant risks, but doing nothing guaranteed disaster. "Let's divide the tasks," Professor Graves decided. "Sarah, you stay here with the translation equipment. You're our best chance at understanding any warnings or instructions that appear. Jake and I will handle the power connection. We'll maintain constant communication." He double-checked their emergency procedures. "If anything goes wrong, we have 10 minutes to evacuate before the containment fails completely. No heroics. If it comes to that, we abandon everything and get to the ship." The preparations began immediately. They gathered necessary equipment, reviewed safety protocols, and established multiple communication channels. Sarah positioned herself at the main control console, ready to interpret any changes in the ancient system's behavior. Above them, the portal continued its ominous pulsing, the patterns of light becoming more erratic as time passed. The fate of countless worlds rested on their ability to master technology millennia beyond their current understanding. The journey back to the surface proved more challenging than anticipated. Professor Graves and Jake navigated through increasingly unstable corridors, their path illuminated by flickering emergency lights that had somehow remained functional for centuries. "Watch your step," Jake cautioned, pointing his handheld scanner at a section of floor that registered unusual energy readings. "These tiles are becoming unstable. The entity's influence is spreading faster than we thought." They adjusted their route, taking longer but safer passages upward. Meanwhile, Sarah faced her own difficulties in the control chamber. The ancient systems, responding to their presence, had begun activating additional protocols. Panels slid open to reveal complex interfaces covered in unfamiliar symbols. "Professor, I'm seeing new sequences appearing," she reported through their comms. "They seem to be asking for authorization codes." Her fingers flew across her translation device, trying to keep up with the rapidly changing displays. "Some of these patterns are referencing celestial alignments. I think they're trying to synchronize with the planet's orbit." Back in the tunnels, Jake noticed worrying signs of structural degradation. Sections of wall oozed a strange, iridescent substance that seemed to eat away at the surrounding material. "This stuff wasn't here when we came down," he observed, carefully collecting a sample with extended tongs. "It's like the very fabric of reality is breaking down." His scanner showed alarming readings of exotic particles flooding the area. We need to hurry. The contamination levels are rising exponentially. At the surface, accessing the ship's power systems presented its own set of problems. The harsh environment had caused unexpected corrosion in key components, forcing them to improvise repairs. The main conduit needs realignment, Professor Graves called out, struggling to maneuver the heavy equipment in the planet's reduced gravity. Jake, can you stabilize the coupling while I adjust the frequency modulator? Their breath fogged their visors as they worked against time, knowing that every second counted in their battle against the encroaching chaos below. Communication breakdowns began manifesting in subtle ways at first. Static would interrupt their transmissions, cutting off crucial words mid-sentence. Repeat that last part about the harmonic sequence, Professor Graves requested, straining to hear through the interference. Sarah's response came fragmented, syllables lost to bursts of white noise. The problem worsened as they attempted to coordinate the power transfer. Critical instructions became garbled, forcing them to rely on visual signals and prearranged codes. Jake discovered the source of the disruption while examining the main power cable. The entity's influence is extending through the electromagnetic spectrum, he explained, showing Professor Graves the distorted readings on his scanner. It's not just blocking our communications, it's twisting them. Some of these signal patterns match the same chaotic waves we saw in the portal chamber. They watched in alarm as their equipment began displaying nonsensical data, numbers flipping and rearranging themselves randomly. In the control room, Sarah fought to maintain clarity in their exchanges. I'm switching to low-frequency transmission, she announced, her voice barely audible through the static. Try channel 7.3. The change helped temporarily, but even basic coordination became a challenge. Simple tasks required elaborate confirmation protocols. 3 short pulses for yes. 2 long for no, she established, using their helmet lights to supplement verbal commands. The situation reached critical levels when their primary communication link failed entirely. Working in near isolation, each team member had to make judgment calls based on partial information and educated guesses. Sarah relied on her understanding of the ancient texts to anticipate necessary actions, while Professor Graves and Jake adapted their technical procedures to account for unseen variables. Trust in each other's expertise became their only lifeline as the entity's influence spread, threatening to sever their connection completely. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through Sarah's meticulous documentation of the ancient texts. Wait, stop, she exclaimed suddenly, her eyes locked on a particular sequence of glyphs. These aren't just instructions, they're equations. She quickly cross-referenced the symbols with known mathematical constants. The Kelvoran encoded their technical protocols in their language. This section here describes the exact harmonic frequencies needed to stabilize the containment fields. Her fingers flew across her interface, translating the archaic script into modern scientific notation. Professor Graves grasped the significance immediately. They used their linguistic patterns to preserve complex technical knowledge, he realized. Even if future generations forgot the technology, they could reconstruct it from the language itself. He relayed the critical information to Jake through their compromised communication link. We need to tune the power output to match these specific frequencies. It's like they created a universal key in their writing system. Jake worked furiously at the power junction, adjusting the ship's output to match the newly discovered specifications. These harmonics are incredible, he commented, watching as the energy flow began to stabilize. They're using standing wave patterns to reinforce the dimensional barrier. It's like creating a perfect echo that cancels out the entity's influence. The portal's surface responded visibly, its chaotic ripples smoothing into more controlled oscillations. As they synchronized their efforts, the ancient system began acknowledging their inputs. Control panels lit up with confirmation sequences, and previously inactive components sprang to life. The entity's resistance grew weaker as the precisely calibrated frequencies created a counterpattern that effectively pushed back against its attempts to breach containment. For the first time since their arrival, they felt a glimmer of hope that they might succeed where the Kelvoran had eventually failed. Victory seemed within reach until the entity launched its desperate counterattack. The portal chamber erupted in a storm of chaotic energies, sending shockwaves through the entire structure. Containment fields are destabilizing, Jake shouted, struggling to maintain his position as the ground bucked violently beneath them. Warning klaxons blared from the ancient systems, their urgency transcending the barrier of time. Professor Graves clung to a control panel, his eyes fixed on the rapidly fluctuating readings. The entities found a weakness in our harmonic pattern. Sarah worked feverishly at the main console, her translation device flashing with emergency protocols. "There's a secondary sequence," she called out, her voice barely audible over the roar of escaping energy. The Kael'Voran anticipated this. They left fail-safe measures. Her fingers danced across the interface, implementing the additional layer of protection. The portal's surface writhed like a living thing, tendrils of darkness reaching out toward them. "The power coupling's failing," Jake reported, sparks flying from the overloaded connection. "I need to manually override the safety locks." Without hesitation, he began bypassing critical systems, knowing the risk of catastrophic overload. The temperature in the chamber rose dangerously as the entity's influence intensified, warping the very air around them. Professor Graves assisted Sarah, helping her input the complex sequence of commands required to activate the failsafe. Their movements became synchronized through necessity rather than planning. Time seemed to stretch and compress as they fought against impossible odds. The entity's attacks grew more sophisticated, targeting their weakest points with precision that suggested intelligence rather than mere destructive force. Equipment began failing spectacularly, circuits burning out from the overwhelming pressure. Yet through it all, they maintained their focus, driven by the knowledge that failure would mean doom not just for them, but for countless worlds beyond. The final moments of their struggle played out like a symphony of coordinated desperation. "Initiate Phase 3. Professor Graves commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Sarah responded instantly, triggering the next sequence of commands while simultaneously monitoring the portal's reaction. The ancient system acknowledged their inputs with a cascade of lights that pulsed in perfect harmony with the calculated frequencies. "Harmonic alignment at 70%, she reported, her eyes darting between multiple displays. Jake worked miracles with the power systems, manually adjusting flow rates while enduring painful electrical feedback. "I'm getting interference spikes," he warned, his body jerking with each surge. The entity's trying to disrupt the pattern. He forced himself to maintain contact with the controls, knowing that breaking the connection could collapse the entire system. Sweat poured down his face as he fought to keep the power stable through sheer force of will. Professor Graves divided his attention between supporting Sarah and monitoring structural integrity. "The containment fields are holding," he announced, relief evident in his voice. "But we're pushing the materials past their design limits." Cracks began appearing in the chamber walls, glowing with the same chaotic energy that threatened to overwhelm them. Sarah implemented the final sequence, her hands moving with practiced precision despite the mounting pressure. "Activating dimensional dampeners," she stated, each word measured and deliberate. As the last command executed, the portal's surface stabilized dramatically. The chaotic patterns smoothed into orderly waves, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The entity's influence receded, contained once more behind reinforced barriers. Instruments registered a return to safe operating parameters, though warning indicators remained active, reminding them of the ongoing danger. Exhausted but triumphant, they collapsed against their respective stations, the magnitude of their achievement sinking in gradually. In the aftermath of their victory, the team conducted thorough assessments of the site. "We've bought time," Professor Graves summarized, reviewing the comprehensive data they'd collected. "The reinforced containment should hold for another millennium, possibly longer." He gestured to the detailed schematics displayed on their portable terminals. "But this isn't a permanent solution. The entity's nature makes complete destruction impossible without risking catastrophic consequences to local space-time." Sarah compiled their findings into a comprehensive report. The Kael'Voran left extensive documentation, she noted, organizing thousands of translated texts. Their civilization sacrificed everything to contain this threat, developing technologies and protocols that could help future generations maintain the seal. She highlighted several promising avenues for further research. Their harmonic mathematics alone could revolutionize our understanding of dimensional physics. Jake inspected the modified power systems, ensuring their emergency reinforcements remained stable. The ship's reactor provided exactly what we needed, he confirmed. But we've drained most of our reserves. We'll need to request resupply before we can attempt any similar operations elsewhere. He documented their technical innovations, particularly the methods they developed for interfacing modern technology with ancient systems. This experience has shown we can adapt our current capabilities to work with alien tech, given enough time and resources. Together, they established monitoring protocols and contingency plans, knowing that while they'd succeeded this time, eternal vigilance would be required. The entity remained a threat, and their narrow escape served as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by forces beyond human comprehension. As the Aurora prepared for departure, the team reflected on their transformative experience. "We faced something that defies understanding and survived," Professor Graves mused, gazing at the planet shrinking in the viewport. "But more importantly, we learned that cooperation and dedication can overcome even seemingly impossible challenges." Sarah nodded, securing their research archives. "Every discovery we made, every obstacle we overcame, taught us valuable lessons about ourselves and our place in the universe." Jake performed final system checks, his thoughts drifting to the technological marvels they'd encountered. "Working with that ancient machinery changed how I view engineering," he admitted. "It's not just about building things. It's about understanding the fundamental principles that connect different approaches to solving problems." The experience had forged a bond between them, transforming three specialists into a cohesive unit capable of achieving the extraordinary. Their return would bring both recognition and responsibility. The knowledge they'd gained carried weight beyond academic importance. It represented humanity's first real defense against cosmic-scale threats. As they set course for home, they knew their lives would never be the same. The encounter on Xantona had opened doors to possibilities they'd never imagined, while simultaneously impressing upon them the awesome responsibility of wielding such knowledge. "Remember to subscribe for more incredible journeys into the unknown," Professor Graves added with a smile, knowing their story would inspire others to explore the mysteries of the universe.